that our expenditure as a country is growing faster than our revenue. And we must rethink, that process. So there is a need to rationalize that expenditure. And how do we rationalize that expenditure? One, we must cut back on any wasteful expenditure. I think we've been told that up to 1/3 of our budget is wasted. And what happens when you have a wastage in budget? So for example, if you think about taxes, we collect about 1.5 trillion in taxes out of a total GDP of 10 trillion as a country. It means that we're only collecting 15% in taxes out of our GDP. When you look at the more developed country, they're actually collecting up to 30%, over 30% in terms of that GDP. So one of the things we must do then is cut back on any wasteful spending, so that we can free up some of those resources so that they can be redirected to where they're needed most. We also must implement our budget monitoring reports. The Auditor General and the Controller of Budget continue to highlight areas of wasteful spending. I think some of those areas have been successfully, I think because of the pandemic, there wasn't as much travel, but we still, which had been used as for almost wasteful spending, but we still continue to see scandals, erupting from time to time. And some of these areas continue to be highlighted by the Auditor General. But we find that we don't have a process in this country in terms of prosecuting and even how quickly we can recover some of those assets that have been misappropriated. There's also a need to monitor really the use of expenditure and make sure that it's, especially where we have borrowed money, right? We are continuing to borrow huge sums of money. So it's important because, as we've said, debt in itself is not wrong. Borrowing money in itself is not wrong. But the bigger issue is, how are we using this money? How is it being prudently used? If it's being used strictly, all of it for purposes of what it was borrowed for, which is many times supposedly for development, then that's not a problem. The problem comes in when you borrow the money to use it for things like recurrent expenditure. So it becomes important that we have strict monitoring of how borrowed money is being utilized.